I'm David Bank, and from Impact Alpha, this is an Agents of Impact podcast.
Americans 50 and older would be the world's third largest economy, contributing over $8 trillion. And that's projected to grow to $28 trillion by 2050.
That's Peter Kaldes, President and CEO of Next50, a Colorado-based foundation trying to get to 100% alignment of its endowment with its mission to value the dignity and opportunities presented by the aging population. I caught up with Peter to learn about the investment opportunities in the shifting demographics. Next50 and Impact Alpha are partnering to enable our coverage of this emerging beat that we're calling Valuing Aging, and to chronicle Next50's journey to 100%. Let's jump right in. Peter Kaldes, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
Aging is the topic of the day here, and it's something I think we can all relate to because we're all aging. And in fact, I've just turned 65 myself, so it's on my mind. So tell me about investing in aging, and then we'll get to Next50. But just tell us about aging and why that's interesting.
Well, first of all, happy birthday, and I'm glad you're embracing your age. We all should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Of course. David, look, you're part of a global mega trend. Just some data, right? By 2050, there's going to be double the number of people over 60 globally. So by 2050, we'll have almost 2.1 billion people over the age of 60. And in just 5 years' time, the US will have more people over 65 than under 18 for the first time in history. And if you think about it, as a private foundation, we care about the most vulnerable. And about a third of today's older adults in the US are economically insecure or, living off of $30,000 a year. And so never in human history have we had so many people living this long.
And so you have a kind of inexorable demographic trend, of aging, which, I guess can be steered in some ways in birth rates and healthcare and whatnot, but is essentially a kind of mega trend coming at us. And then, as you say, we have these social challenges that also have some bearing on aging. And you mentioned the income and financial insecurity, and then also, of course, people talk about the budget hits that will be associated with that as well. So now Next50 has put itself in the middle of this whole constellation of issues. And just so tell us how who you are and what role you hope to play.
Well, it's expensive to get old. And it's expensive to get old in the state of Colorado, which is where Next50 is. And it's expensive to get old in the country and around the globe. So what we're trying to do as a private foundation is try and make it less expensive, make it more affordable for people to have the social, economic, health, physical needs to respond to this lack of affordability in aging. So that's what we're focused on. We provide grant making since 2016, which is when we were created. We've provided a little over $70 million in grants, and now increasingly are moving more into utilizing the rest of the 95% of our endowment.
Well, that's a fascinating topic, broadly speaking, the way that foundations are now doing what I think you're talking about of mission-related investing. But you have actually gone all in, not only 100%, which some other of your foundation colleagues have also committed to, but 100% on the very topic, the very sector and theme that the foundation is focused on around aging. So just tell us a little bit about getting to that decision.
Well, the foundation was born out of a need for innovation in the aging sector. And it's that spirit of innovation that has really driven the trustees to commit to aligning the entirety of the endowment to be mission aligned. And for us, that means how can we continue catalyzing innovation in aging? So in September of 23, which is when I joined as CEO, I really wanted to continue that out of the box thinking. And we spent a significant amount of time developing a framework for how we could invest in aging that allows us to align the entirety of our endowment, because candidly, it hasn't been done before.
Well, this might be a good time to disclose to our listeners that Next 50 and Impact Alpha have a partnership to kind of chronicle this journey because it's a perfect kind of case about the use of finance to pursue not only obviously not only financial returns but also a very specific social change strategy, and as you said, aligning the endowment and the programmatic work on the grant side around this idea of valuing aging. And we'll be watching and talking with you over the course of time to see how that is going. But sort of tell us how you think about then, moving the endowment towards this new alignment.
Well, it starts with accepting that aging isn't simply about healthcare. It isn't simply about the biology of aging. It's genuinely a mega trend that's going to impact every aspect of our economy. And, there's some studies out there that actually talk about how aging is already positively impacting our economy, right? So, Americans 50 and older would be the world's third largest economy, contributing over $8 trillion. And that's projected to grow to $28 trillion by 2050. We would be missing out on a profound investment and impact opportunities if we don't actually build this framework. And so what we did is we looked at the research that's out there. We looked at policies. There have been global policy leaders from the World Health Organization, the SDGs, the US Department of Health and Human Services, all have contributed to this body of knowledge that says if you want to age well, you basically have to follow four key principles. So that's what we did. Our investment framework, which can be applied to all asset classes, looks at one, creating economic opportunity, two, supporting the built environment, three, ensuring health, and four, expanding social inclusion. So we created this very high level framework.
Well, that's fascinating because, as you said, health is what folks generally go to when they think about it, and much. I don't know how much of the increased spending in that 50 plus population is healthcare related, but I imagine at least that's a big chunk. But I think what's fascinating about what you're doing is that it's not really just a sort of ever increasing healthcare bill kind of investment strategy, but it's actually a kind of new conception or new framing around aging that takes in many more aspects of what it means for the population to be growing older.
That's right, and we're also doing it in a way that aligns with our mission. In other words, we're looking for impact as well. And so the way we look at impact here is through a traditional bullseye approach, where the outer ring is what we're dubbing an age-friendly impact. The sort of middle ring is very sort of age-inclusive. And then the bullseye is really this idea of an age-centered approach. How can we create positive outcomes for older adults as a real core strategic intention of our portfolio?
Let's take the first part about creating kind of economic opportunity, economic prosperity for older adults, because I applaud you for taking on this question of low income older adults. A lot of the marketing you'd see is apparently quite affluent older adults, and I think that's not really the whole story.
No, that's right, and it is wonderful to see that there are existing ETFs and other thematic funds that are basically driven by consumption. But not everyone can consume a luxury travel experience or a luxury vehicle. Rather, we're looking at creating economic opportunity. So, for example, you can imagine our portfolio will basically screen in and out companies that perhaps engage in age discrimination or don't hire older workers. This is really about creating economic opportunity. That's
You
just
have to
one
do that.
example.
Here's where I might also disclose that I have a bit of history in this field of aging. And before Impact Alpha, I worked at an outfit then called Encore.org, now called CoGenerate. and they were very keen on this reframing of aging around as an opportunity, and particularly an opportunity for social impact and social purpose. And one of the innovations that we kind of pioneered was what came to be called encore careers. And essentially, it was working longer, but a bit with a twist, which was do something that you kind of always wanted to do and maybe earn some income as well. And that has very meritorious effects on your ultimate retirement financial security. But working longer is not always an easy sell.
No, that's right. It also creates purpose, which has its own value to an older adult, and it creates intergenerational relationships. So it allows for folks to sort of see themselves as they age, because truthfully, we don't have a sort of handbook on how to get old in this country. And so any idea like the one that cogenerate generated, or even a major company who happens to have more than a third of its workers be over 50 and actually engage in creative uh, engagement and retention by its older employees is of value to us, because they demonstrate that they themselves value aging. So that creates an investment opportunity for us.
So, investment opportunities, I imagine you're like many foundations going through a set of managers as opposed to trying to find these deals directly. So, that means that you need to delve into the whole world of private equity. And I wonder whether you're finding private equity managers that subscribe to the thesis and are executing on it.
Absolutely. In fact, some of the early adopters, if you will, of the silver economy or the opportunity in longevity has been in the biotech space, as well as in this nascent field known as age tech. And so, actually, Next 50 has invested in a couple of such funds. One is a biotech related fund called Age One, which basically invests in biotech related to aging and longevity. So think about new therapeutics for aging related diseases, or machine learning platforms that advance drug discovery related to aging. Another fund that we invest in is 1843 Capital, which is focused on age and longevity tech. So there, think about all those membership diagnostic health platforms that go above and beyond what your normal sort of GP does, or investing in autonomous vehicles that are wheelchair accessible, so specifically designed for folks with mobility issues. Lots of opportunity there.
You mentioned the longevity investment, and that, of course, is a favorite of many Silicon Valley type billionaires who I think want to live forever. And there is quite remarkable research being done on that. But are you down for the live forever startup plays?
No, we're not prepared to live forever. And what's great about this particular fund is they're looking at the chronic conditions underlying longevity as opposed to trying to cure for longevity. Look, put differently, a lot of these billionaires think aging in and of itself is a disease. And we don't take that point of view. We definitely want to help people live longer, healthier lives, but we aren't investing in the fountain of youth.
And I'm interested as well in autonomous vehicles. I also just say, in personal experience, I have two parents over 90, and the thought that a car could drive them around on its own it has some appeal. So that's a age related investment. So tell us how you think about investing in autonomous vehicles.
Well, autonomous vehicles have demonstrated they're going to solve for a massive problem in our transportation infrastructure, particularly as it relates to older adults. Think about older adults who are socially isolated, live at home, can't get to their medical appointments. Think about older adults that live in rural areas. Uh, we think autonomous vehicles could really solve for engagement, getting people the healthcare they need on time. And we're particularly proud of investments that are made in those autonomous vehicles that are age inclusive. In other words, thinking about how it's easy to get in and out of the vehicle, making it accessible for folks, providing clear instructions and loud instructions within the car while the car is moving. There's just some really great innovations there, and I think that's one of the ways that we can create economic opportunity. But it also aligns with our priority or our principle of creating social connectivity for older adults.
And I think part of that, though, will have to be, get over the, "Oh, shit" factor that there's nobody behind the wheel that I think, folks who've grown up, driving all their life, have maybe a little harder time getting over than maybe young people who think it's, just the way that people get around now. Um, this all sounds like there could be real win-wins. I wonder how you think about the trajectory, say, of public policy on this. And in particular, there's some budget news out of Washington that is interesting in terms of where these opportunities might be, or what opportunities might get be being foreclosed. So, what's the role of government in pulling off this reframing of aging?
Well, I think right now we view aging in this country as the responsibility of us as individuals or families, or the public sector or the government. And we haven't done enough to focus on the capital markets and the opportunities there. But I do think that this budget that was recently released by the administration is going to force everyone's hand to try and figure out how we can collaborate more and find funding opportunities to support these communities that we care about. So, for example, when you look at the federal budget, it's not hyperbole to say that about 40% of the federal budget is basically tied to aging. Think about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, National Institute on Aging research, and other federal investments. And what's troubling is, first of all, there's no one really in charge of aging at the federal level. But two, the administration is looking to make cuts that would be really devastating at a time when there's no other source of funding to support it. So, for example, there's a teeny tiny agency called the Administration for Community Living within HHS, and they administer about $2.5 billion or so of grants related to aging and disability. So these are the things that like help people live independently, well-being, prevent social isolation. But these are also the programs that support Meals on Wheels and senior centers and daycares, adult daycares. Right now, the budget basically zeroes out the agency that would manage all that. So who's going to pick up that gap, right?
You'd think that the administration would be keen on solving the age-related challenges, because the immigration policy, I think, would have the effect of cutting off some of the young people coming into the country, and in fact, I think would accelerate the demographic trend you're talking about towards aging. I think one of the reasons why the U.S. is relatively younger and more vibrant than many other countries is we have had a fairly open immigration and brought in young people. I will also just say one of my other hobby horses on this is that the immigrants tend to pay into Social Security more than they take out. So if we even just want to keep that program solvent, it relies a lot on immigrant contributions. Um, uh,
Yeah,
speaking,
David. No, no, that's right. I agree with you. And in fact, immigration isn't the only place where it intersects with aging policy, right? So think about the direct care workers, many of whom are immigrants themselves. We are running out of caregivers in this country. So the whole care economy could very much crumble under a weight of a pretty draconian immigration policy. But also, when you think about growing the economy, one way to do it is to increase, the labor force participation rate. And historically, we've relied on immigration for that. But if you turn that off, you necessarily have to look at other sources of employees, and who better than older workers who need to and want to stay longer in the market.
yeah, there's implications all over the place. That actually raises another question, which is who among other countries are models, or who's doing it right? Many countries are much further along on this aging journey, whether it's Southern Europe and Spain and Italy, or Japan and South Korea. So who's got interesting innovations that the U.S. might learn from?
Definitely Japan and other Southeast Asian countries who are dealing with this demographic shift rapidly and are a little bit ahead of us, a little bit ahead of the US, have been very intentional about dealing with an aging demographic. So, for example, Singapore does their urban planning with aging at its center. There are plans that include multi generational housing and care and transportation supports, all part of city planning. That's the sort of intentional planning we need because, like I said earlier, this isn't something that may happen to us. We're very much living the demographic shift right now. I mean, just look at enrollment in academic institutions is down because we're running out of people to enroll. And so I think we have to be very intentional in our own economic development planning and really centering aging as a strategy.
Okay, and then just to take it home, you're building a portfolio. Presumably, you want some returns from that portfolio. How do you sort of set up the rules for your investment managers to think about, across asset classes, in not only in private equity but in fixed income and public equities and everything else? And how do you think about whether you're giving up returns because you've adopted this sector specific or aging lens?
Well, I think it starts with finding a great partner, and we have in JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan has been terrific to get us off the ground here. They are working with us to really understand what you described, which is, what is our tolerance for risk? And I have to say, we're convinced, given the diversity of a robust aging portfolio, yeah, we're going to get market rate returns when investing in our future. And yes, there's going to be some perhaps concessionary returns, as some would call it. But to be so hyper focused with our endowment on what's going to make us all age well, we think, particularly in partnership with JP Morgan, could be really catalytic. It'll really force maybe their existing clients to see opportunities in aging. Uh, and we're just really excited about the opportunity.
And where are we on the journey, and how long do you expect?
Well, we are about 6 months into the journey. Our goal is to have about 60% of the endowment aligned by the end of this year. So we have another 6 months or so to go. And hopefully, in a few years, all of it will be aligned. And we're really excited about just charting this new path and hopefully get others to come on board because this is a real market, right? So, some of our friends who are at members of an organization called Grant Makers in Aging, they're all foundations like us who are invested in grant making in aging, and they account for nearly $45 billion in assets. So we think we have some folks who will follow us along and really help change how we view aging and how we invest in aging.
Well, we'll be following you along in Next 50, Peter, and we'll be following the construction of this portfolio and watching how you put it together and think about it. And we're very excited. We think that's going to be a super interesting beat over the next couple of years. So appreciate the partnership and appreciate your time here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, David. We're looking forward to working with you.
That's going to do it for this Agents of Impact podcast. Thanks to Peter Kaldes, to our producer, Isaac Silk, to the whole team at Impact Alpha, and to all of you Agents of Impact. Thanks again for all that you do.